Hello, Mizahar. So it's been a long time since I've done a vlog. I think it's been about 2 years or something. And a lot has happened with Sayana's life. And she's changed. She's changed a lot since when I first created her, till to where she is now. And so I wanted to make this vlog focusing on that progression and sort of the dynamics of her character and what she used to be and what she is now. I might break this up into 2 vlogs, maybe even 3, because I got a bunch of questions from Oren. So, so to start, I'll start with her history, or her prehistory, just before creation, because way back when I created her, I needed an excuse to get her from Anatep to Sileris, because that's where I was going to start her. And so she had this tale of woe where she got captured by a Zith on this Cyprus plains, and so she went through this little bit of slavery with the Zith being her captor, and then she finally escaped and got to got to Sileris. So this started one of her very first plot arcs. This was her fear of Zith that she had to overcome. And so that was way back in the fall of 514. It was weird saying those dates. So back in 514 fall, that was my first season on Mizahar, and that was mostly me getting used to the role-playing environment, meeting new friends, and sort of getting a sense of the community and feeling my way out as a role player in a new forum. So she had some, casual encounters, got her first job, and all that fun stuff when you start. And then, so the next season, winter of 514, she meets Aaron, who is an Akalak, and she has her first romantic encounters with him, and that's when I start to plot out a little path for them to get close. And so he becomes her lover. This was when I made my first plot arc my second plot arc. My first plot arc was the fear of Zith. My second plot arc was, since she was a dancer and very flirtatious and a seductress, I want her to have a mishap. And so in the form of having an unexpected pregnancy and having to deal with all that. And so my goal as a writer was to first meet another PC in this case and have that start that particular plot. This, by the way, back in winter 14, wow, my second season on Mizahar, I had OOCly, out of characterly, seen some of Clyde Sullen's work at this time. This was when this is when a big explosion went off in Sileris. It happened in the fall of that year, but I found out more about the details behind it in the winter, and I thought it was a very cool kind of plot, and I thought it was very cool that a PC character could have something so major and impactful happen in the world of Mizahar. So that was back in winter of 514. And then for spring and summer of 515, I spent it Sayana exploring the wilds around Sileris, starting to get over her fear of Zith and increasing her dagger ability and all that stuff. And also developing her relationship with Aaron. They went on a camping trip. They had a New Year's party. They had a birthday party for Sayana, and then he proposed. And so then there was all that relationship stuff happening, and then there was also Sayana going through her pregnancy at that point. And then by the time sort of midsummer came, there was their wedding, and what came after the wedding, and sort of post-wedding of the summer of 515, she had a miscarriage. This was actually, it was a plot that I was humming and hawing back and forth. I wasn't sure if I actually wanted her to have the child or not. And actually, way back in the spring of that year, I had asked a storyteller to give me one choice or the other, so that I didn't have to choose. And I copied Aaron on those set of emails. So, but I think it was a good choice, and it made for an interesting dynamic. And so midsummer, a little bit after her wedding, she has the miscarriage, and then she, in her grief, because it was very traumatic for her. In her grief, she tries to do a rebound, essentially, and attempts to adopt Timothy Mured. He was a long ago Kanashian, and he was in Sileris at that time. And so she adopts, kidnaps, persuades with finesse to, she persuades Timothy to flee to Alvadas with her, because she wanted to get away from it all. She had this miscarriage, and she was kind of a wreck, and she didn't even, she was finding it hard to even face Aaron with all that. And for me, for out of character reasons, I wanted her to go to Alvadas because I wanted her to start learning skills like stealth and intelligence and sort of that underground kind of skills. And it's really hard to learn those things in a city of peace of Sileris, where nothing's really special is going on, and there's no danger from the knights, or there's not really that much danger. And so she needed a different scenery to learn, or different setting and different city to learn those kinds of skills. And so that's why I sent her off to Alvadas. And it was a different setting to sort of start her, begin her transition to a darker character. So this was the end of summer of 515, where she left to go to Alvadas, and with Timothy in tow. This also worked out very well for me in an out-of-character sense, because at this point, Aaron's writer became inactive, and so it was an excuse for me to be able to move on with her story without getting held up by that inactivity. And I haven't heard from Aaron for a very, very long time now. So that brings us to fall of 515. And this is her in Alvadas, and this is where she buys her first slave. This was Nefti. And I must thank Nefti. That was a very fun plot arc, enjoying Nefti as Sayana's slave. And this was something that Sayana had always wanted to do, ever since she was a little kid, that she wanted to have enough power and wealth to actually be able to own a slave. And so this was a big stepping stone for her to have actually finally bought a slave. Although the ironic thing, or the slight difference in this situation, was her slave was not just a normal human. It was another Epharian, and another Epharian woman or girl. Nefti, I think, is about 16-ish, or at the time was about that. And so there's a lot of this. She could look at Nefti and really see herself in this young Epharian woman. And so she ended up being a lot more sympathetic as a slave owner. Anyway, so for fall 515, she buys her first slave, and she also hunts down her very first Zith. So at this point she's overcome the being afraid of Zith, and now she wants to do the next step of taking revenge on Zith. And so she hunts down her first Zith, and near the end of the season, she starts feeling some of these repercussions of hunting down a Zith, because she did hunt it down and kill the Zith, and Alvidas is quite open to all races, and so the murder of any race by any race is has consequences. So this also opens up an opportunity for her to explore skills like stealth and disguise, because she was hiding out a lot in the city of Alvidas, trying to hide in the underground, for example, because she knew there were people of authority after her, and so this gave me the opportunity to develop those particular skills. Yeah. And this brings us to winter of 515, where she experiences the true repercussions of this murder, where she gets captured by a speaker named the Seamstress, and I had my first moderated thread by ST. I'd had one with a GST earlier, but this one was my first one with a storyteller, and it was beautiful. It was 6 posts in total between me and the ST, 3 posts each, and it was essentially a torture scene, and where Sayana is tied up and is facing the consequences for killing a Sith. But there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. She was able to convince the seamstress that she could redeem herself, but at the cost, she was put under this Zith illusion because there was a needle, of some kind of illusioned needle that was pierced into her body that caused her to have this Zith illusion. And so this brings about so for the rest of the winter she ends up being this Zith, and she can't talk properly because whenever she talks it turns into Zithanese, and no one can hear Zithanese because it's way too high-pitched or sub-pitched or whatever. But she had recently learned a little bit of hypnotism from Nefti, and now she starts making excessive use of her hypnotism because she cannot talk, and so she can only communicate by suggesting emotions or suggestions, and she feels very isolated. She finally learns a bit of patience because she can't just talk. So when you're forced to shut up, you learn to be a bit more patient. And then that brings us to the end of winter, like winter 515, and where there's a big battle of undead that happens in Alvidas, and she finally somewhat redeems herself by leading the Zith into battle against the undead on behalf of Alvidas. But at the very end, she does a smaller or big betrayal of one of the leaders of the Zith, and essentially backstabs him, if I recall. So yes, that's the end of this portion. I'll be doing a part 2 because I'm almost at 15 minutes. I don't want to make that too long, but I will be back shortly.